Well, 2 minutes ago, you heard our colleague, SABC reporter, on that story around these bogus schools operating in the Ivory Park area in Gauteng. Steve Mabona, the spokesperson for the Gauteng Education Department. Steve, good evening. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good evening, Steve, and to all our viewers.
You had to go and bust these schools before. You had to try and stop them from operating. Now some of them are running again.
It's quite unfortunate what is happening there. But our officials have been on the ground. As you will understand, that we are actually still finalizing the process of placing some of the children that we have identified there. We started with about 690 that we've already placed in the first phase. We moved to the second phase where we identified about 1,003 of those learners. We placed about 344. So we are left with about 649 to be placed. So it's quite unfortunate that then we discover that there are those that are still operating. And we've been in the community to say, you don't need to take your children there. We will accommodate them and make sure that they get a better, education. You can't tell me that when you are in the same class, so many of you, then there's a, better chance of you learning, in that environment. It's quite sad. But what we have done, because remember, we've also discovered, subsequent to the one that was discovered in Cosmo City, we have actually sent our officials. They have actually discovered about 10. So we have closed them down, and we are finalizing the process of placing those learners as well in that area. It's quite unfortunate, and we have decided now to work very closely with the police to say when we go into these areas, we really need to go with them so that the process of them being charged will then start. Unlike us going before, and then at a later stage you must then identify all these people and say police must then act, because also it becomes cumbersome for us to utilize the court processes where you're going to apply for a court order to make people to cease to operate. Quite cumbersome, but then we think if we work very closely with the police, because we already started to establish some form of an engagement to say this is how we're going to be working moving forward.
I mean, look, your department often is the department that ends up having to deal with many of the problems and dynamics in our society, and this would seem to be one of them. There's several dynamics coinciding here. But what this means is, as you heard from our reporter, that these schools often they stop before matric because they know they can't get into your matric system, right? So this means those children are going to another school. They're putting pressure on your schools at that particular time. But it also means they're not properly prepared. I mean, presumably they're going to have a very poor matric as a result.
And we have clarified that with the parents. When we met with the parents to say, we're going to assess these learners, and we've already started with that process. All those that have been placed, we said the schools must assess, and we have our specialists that will be coming from the district office, go there as well, assist the schools to assess them. Unfortunately, those that are purported to be at grade 9, and we, according to the assessment, they must be probably at grade 7 or so. Unfortunately, we have to engage with the parents to say they need to understand that it's not that we are taking them back, but we want to assist them. They need to have a better future, because you cannot jump grades and you'll be pushed to further grades. Meanwhile, you're going to struggle at grade 12. And more so, we are introducing now a general education certificate where at grade 9 you must be certified. So it's going to be difficult for them. And we'll work tirelessly just to make sure that parents understand that when we take them back, it's not that we are jealous, like it's been purported or said. We want to help them and make sure that they are better people in the next future.
The people who run these schools, what are you able to charge them with? Is it fraud, taking money under false pretenses? In a way, it's actually quite a complicated legal position.
It's quite complicated. That's why we said, and there's an assurance that our officials have already established an interaction with the law enforcement agencies to say, moving forward, how do you then work together and make sure that people are charged, accordingly? Because there are so many, criminal activities that are happening there. So we should be in a position to, in the near future, to announce, to say these are the elements that we have agreed upon with the law enforcement agencies, because we can't do it on our own. And we are indebted to them in Cosmo City because they are doing their operation, and they happen to find one school which led to us going in the area and discovering most of illegal schools. So we're shutting them all down, but we will then be working very closely with law enforcement agencies so that they can assist. Like as we said, we found ourselves in a situation where we should not be focusing on social issues but education issues, but now we find ourselves in a very cumbersome situation.
Steve Mabona, thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the Gauteng Education Department. Reaction to that SABC expose tonight.